This time we have some bad news, and it's going to be on the AMD side. Look at these numbers. It just came out. Nvidia has 88% market share of discrete GPUs in the market. AMD is down to only 8%, and look who's right behind them. Yes, that's right. I'm going to show you. It's this guy right here. This is the Intel Arc, Intel discrete GPUs. Who would have thought? We thought this was pretty much even canceled, but they're around half the market share of AMD. Let me put this back before I get too excited there. Now, Intel Arc, still don't recommend it because the drivers are still, catching up, but has potential. I don't know if it's a complete throwaway yet, but this is really not that good for AMD. 4% market share, and this just came out recently. Intel discrete GPUs, there are not too many on the market. AMD's 8%, but AMD's only having 8% market share is a pretty shocking number. I thought it was at least 20% like we've heard in the past. So this shows you how popular Nvidia's GPU have been during the last few years. In a way, it kind of makes sense because look, AMD's next generation is still to come out, the 7900 XT and the XTX. That's going to be coming out next month. AMD really has not had a significant launch since RX 6000 came out, like the 6900 XT and things like that. They did have an update, a refresh with the 6950 XT, all the different 50 XT variations, but I don't really believe those were really all that popular. They came right when the GPU market was starting to kind of tumble and come down anyway, while Nvidia did have some significant GPU sort of, refreshes during the last few years. After their 3080 and 3090 came out, they then of course had the 3080 Ti, 3070 Ti, 3060 Ti. All those are extremely popular, sold very, very well. Then of course at the tail end, 3090 Ti didn't really do all that great because of the high pricing, but then they were sort of first to market with that 4090, which surprisingly sold a lot of GPUs. In fact, the last numbers that we actually saw showed that Nvidia had shipped around 130,000. It's definitely higher by now, and then around 30,000 RTX 4080s, and judging by how the shelves are absolutely empty of 4090s, you can say they probably sold pretty well. And of course, while Nvidia hasn't sold out of the 4080s in some local Micro Center stores and different things like that, and it hasn't been a really well regarded launch, still they're doing a lot better than AMD, whose only GPUs are sort of the the cheaper RX 6000 series that are just getting discounted. So AMD needs a big win with the 7900 XT and the XTX. I really hope they can produce enough to keep up with demand. There's certainly a lot of positive hype for these AMD GPUs. People are a little bit sick and tired of the Nvidia pricing on the 4080, but I guess judging by these numbers, they're not tired enough because Nvidia's 88% market share is a pretty staggering number. I mean, that's almost complete market dominance. It's almost relegating AMD to just, almost the same size as Intel, who's a relative newcomer to the GPU market, while AMD has been around now for quite a while. So definitely very interesting to see these numbers. They're going to have to really be aggressive with the amount of GPUs that are being sold. Now, I don't think this is surprising. Here are a few reasons why. First, it's going to be, of course, due to Nvidia's very strong brand. You can say what you want about the pricing practices, but no other GPU manufacturer is going to raise your emotions much like Nvidia. I mean, look at this wall behind me here of classic. These are just the GPU coolers. There's no GPUs in them, but they were awesome GPUs at one time. There's a 1080 Ti up there. There's a Titan GPU, a 3080, all pretty much classic GPUs at this point. Didn't want to have a 3080 last generation. So AMD definitely has some great performing GPUs, but Nvidia's branding is still really dominant. And of course, they have some tremendous advantages like ray tracing. It's still far superior on the Nvidia side. DLSS 2.0 and 3.0 are definitely the best in town, but AMD definitely has their own equivalent that are doing better, like FSR 2.0 and the upcoming 3.0. So they're definitely getting up there as well. And of course, Nvidia's drivers have always been pretty legendary. They've been great. Anytime there's an issue, they fix it pretty rapidly. And performance-wise, I mean, just look at the 4090. It destroyed anything that came before it. Is the price expensive? Yes, that's Nvidia's thing. They're the premium brand on the market. And now we kind of talk about why AMD made some serious mistakes. AMD tries to price themselves as a premium offering like Nvidia, sometimes a little under, but that's not really the public perception so far. I mean, look at this here. This is the Ryzen CPUs. AMD's famous for trouncing on Intel with cheaper Ryzen CPUs the last few years. But they made a mistake with Ryzen 7000. Too expensive. Nobody bought them. They give you free RAM now for you to be able to buy one of these. And what's happening? Intel is gaining market share in the CPU space once again. Now, go over to this GPU side. Of course, everybody was selling GPUs during the last 2 years. Now, while AMD prices their MSRPs of the GPUs, like the 6900 XT, well below the high end for NVIDIA, and that's justified because the NVIDIA GPUs often do perform better overall. Like a 3090 has so many advantages over a 6900 XT when you look at the big picture. Yes, a 6900 XT will match it in rasterization or beat it in a lot of games, but then we have ray tracing, we have 24 gigabytes of GDDR6X VRAM, which for content creation and different hybrid applications are much superior. You have NVENC, you have all of the little nice things that NVIDIA provides with their GPUs, and then it relegates the 6900 XT, for example, for only really beating it in traditional rasterization, which is, trust me, more than enough for a lot of gamers, but it doesn't tell the entire picture for the overall demand on a GPU. That's why NVIDIA enjoys those numbers. Here's the problem with AMD. Yes, the MSRP of like the 7900 XT looks great on paper, but as we even found out recently, the AIB models are probably going to be hundreds of dollars more expensive. And before, during the great GPU shortage, of course, 3090 was really priced very highly for a lot of the time, much higher than $1499, but so was the 6900 XT, supposed to be $999, but I remember seeing models well over $2,500. That's a much bigger premium over its MSRP than even the 3090 saw in a lot of cases. And while people would justify the 3090 markup because it was superior in many ways to the 6900 XT, many AMD RX 6000 high-end GPUs for a lot of 2021 literally sat on the shelves with those high prices. NVIDIA GPUs with their high prices sold out, nothing would be there, and then RX 6000 with similar high prices, sometimes more if you compare the percentage ratio to the original price, still sat on the shelves because of these issues like I mentioned. So AMD could have gained a lot of market share during 2021 because the GPUs weren't selling. They could have at least sold everything that they had and been sold out like NVIDIA was, but they decided to just leave the price up. And when I say they, I'm actually talking more about the third-party AIB partners. Like when I walked into Micro Center, I would see, Power Color. I would see all of those different GPUs, some Asus GPUs. I would see those AMD models just sit on the shelves because the prices were way too high. So they could have lowered it and at least been sold out, and more people would have had those GPUs. But people said, I'm not going to buy this. I'm just going to wait until NVIDIA comes back in stock. But it took almost a general, collapse of the entire GPU market for GPUs to actually stay in stock on the NVIDIA side where people don't really want to buy them. So AMD, I think, could have capitalized on a lot more market share. The problem is they had smaller market share, thus they were producing less GPUs. You would think they should price them competitively to sort of take on NVIDIA, but the opposite happens. They think, if you only sell a couple anyway, they'll be okay. We'll just keep prices high because they have only a few to sell. I believe that's the wrong way to think, and it's proved by these extremely low market share numbers, a year after. So if they had lowered their prices, and these AIBs definitely had a significant amount of room to lower, because I remember seeing discounts from like $1,600 to $1,100 from like 6900 XTs when these prices started coming down, and the MSRP was never supposed to be that high anyway. So somebody, a middleman along the line, was definitely raising it more than they should. They would have gained more market share, and we would have seen those shelves empty of any AMD GPUs, but they were not empty. They stayed in stock, gathering dust. So that's their big issue, and I believe that's why they have such a low market share. It's not only the dominance hardware-wise of NVIDIA, it's also sort of these little mistakes that AMD and their AIB partners have made. Now, sometimes people will say, it's not AMD's fault, it's the stores or it's the AIB partners. Well, we've seen before these companies have a tremendous influence on their partners. All they have to do is say, don't sell a GPU for over this amount in their, behind the scenes agreement, like NVIDIA does with its partners, and their partners have to respect it if they want to be given GPUs by AMD and by Nvidia. So there's definitely influence here by the main company. You don't think AMD can do market research and see that their third-party GPUs are being sold for really expensive amounts, and then they can go back and talk to that AIB or see who in the chain, in the link, has raised these prices. It doesn't make them look good, because then people see, oh, AMD GPUs are too expensive and not worth it. It results in numbers like this with 8% market share, down from whatever else it was before. AMD really has to smarten up for the 7900 XT, or they're going to continue to lose market share to Nvidia, and Intel is going to be pretty competitive with AMD pretty soon if they don't watch out, and Nvidia will continue to just dominate the entire market. So that's my opinion on this, and AMD could be in trouble. And of course, Nvidia has a lot of tricks up its sleeves that it can pull in terms of pricing and their existing RTX 3000. So a lot of stuff they can do to sort of damage AMD, but AMD can also damage themselves if they're not careful with their pricing and sort of their market availability. All right, guys, so remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next video.